Hey, do you struggle with sleep quality, staying asleep all night? I know I did when I had my adrenal exhaustion, air quotes, because that's what I called it back then. HP axis, dysfunction, whatever, not sure. Metabolic chaos happened to me 10 years ago. Now I'm on a mission to help you avoid going through what happened to me with think I was doing all the right things. I was a personal trainer, running a fitness studio. So I was exercising, practicing what I preach, but I was also training for triathlons, Ironmans, 2 a year usually, because you qualify, then you do Ironman Hawaii. And then I was doing marathons and half marathons and 50K trail running. And I was doing other shorter races that are your, B and C races. But suddenly I got hit by a Mack truck in March 2013. Not literally, didn't get hit by a car, but I felt like it. I was so exhausted. I had to have naps every afternoon. I just couldn't function. I'd go to bed at night. You're that tired but wired, and waking up middle of the night, not knowing what the heck is wrong with me. And then I started to see different practitioners. I wrote my book, Life's Not a Race is a journey to more therapy for me, but to share what happened to me so you didn't go through this. And this is kind of why I became a nutritional therapy practitioner and an FDN practitioner, where you can order functional lab testing and look at the root cause. What are the multiple areas that are out of whack due to a domino effect of things when chronic stress is on? And today we're going to talk to an expert in sleep because I just find this information super powerful. Correlates with what I do as a health investigator, being FDN practitioners. We really look at the whole you from the inside out, looking at your external sources of chronic stress and your hidden sources of internal chronic stress that you don't know about unless you test. And then when we run functional lab testing, we don't just do one test, two tests, treat the results. We put all that together, lay it out, look at the big picture. So I'm talking to Martha Lewis about sleep today, insomnia, and looking at root cause medicine to help that. So let's bring her on. Thanks for listening. All right. Big topic for me. I'm really fired up. I got Martha Lewis on the show to dive into her story, her well. I'm reading your sign behind your head. Sleep well, live well, be well. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Well, I think I'm fired up because I woke up early. My husband's out of town and we've had this ant issue. And I walked in to make coffee before I go to the gym, lift weights, and there's ants everywhere. So I've been on kind of rage, fired up because I've had this ant problem in different parts of the house, but then they're in the pantry all over everything. And the coffee machine, it makes for a deep, stressful day, breathing exercises, go for a walk, not a run. So learning how to navigate what we'll talk about today, chronic stress and sleep issues.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So Martha, talk about a little summary of what do you do? What's your why? And I always love to summarize your purpose, your mission. What's your passion?
Yeah. So, it's funny that I've gotten into sleep because for most of my life I slept great and didn't give it much of a second thought. But
Mhm.
in late pregnancy, I developed insomnia, which I figured was just hormones, but it didn't go away even after my son was born. And he was a horrible sleeper. So I ended up hiring a pediatric sleep consultant to help with his sleep. And then I became a pediatric sleep consultant because that was so life changing. And then I still couldn't sleep. So here I am, like helping parents with sleep, and I'm not sleeping. And that lasted for 2 years before I finally found out about lab testing and found functional diagnostic nutrition and started becoming certified in running the lab tests. And I found there were all these imbalances in my body that were totally explaining why I wasn't sleeping. And so that was why I was like following what I call the sleep rules, which is all the sleep hygiene, and none of that was enough to really help. And so I knew that there was something more going on, and the lab testing really gave me the insights into that. So I'm really passionate about sharing that with others. I think it's like the missing link in sleep issues, which is such an epidemic these days. Like so many people can't sleep, and it's a sign that your body's out of balance. even if you are healthy and take care of your body. Like I always exercise and ate organic, and I was a nutritionist. I worked in the supplement industry, and yet I still developed insomnia and had all these imbalances. So it's just a sign that your body's out of whack, and it can be from chronic stress, both mental and physical, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And so, yeah, so I'm passionate about helping raise awareness that this is the issue and helping people fix that.
So true. And I've been trying to share my story more because I don't always do that. And just I think it's good to revisit, why am I doing what I do today?
Mhm.
And what I find is my purpose, similar to you. It's like, let's get this information out there so other people don't have to suffer and know that it's not your new normal, that you're not going to sleep all night, and learn the tools how to track the problems, those imbalances, because it's so unique to each individual. Probably it's not everyone do it this way. And as
Right.
you said, it took you a long time to figure out, oh, these hidden sources of chronic stress, these imbalances can be contributing to sleep, as my issues too. Is this, okay, why am I awake at middle of the night? Why can't I do anything? Why do I have a nap every afternoon and not sleep at night? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, what are sources of chronic stress, that the different types that you talk about that combine, accumulate to a beaker of stress that can impact our sleep?
Yeah. Well, some of the big ones, as far as physical stressors, have to do with gut health, especially. So, like, I had a parasite that I had probably gotten 13 years before from traveling in Nepal and India. And um, so that damaged my gut over time and led to food sensitivities, and what's called leaky gut, where the gut wall is damaged. And parasites, actually, it turns out, and any kind of pathogen like bacterial overgrowth or candida, which is a kind of yeast, those creatures are nocturnal. And so it's the middle of the night, especially around 3 or 4, that they are most active. And so they are eating and excreting and releasing all these toxins, which I know grosses a lot of people out, but and those toxins cause a lot of inflammation, and they also make the liver congested and overburdened, and so it can't handle those dealing with all those toxins. So they circulate around and cause a lot of inflammation. And then the body releases cortisol because it's an anti-inflammatory hormone. But we also know that cortisol is our stress hormone, and it wakes us up and it makes our mind race and our heart race and gives us energy. So that's not what we want to be happening in the middle of the night. So that was a big piece of the puzzle for me. And then knowing how that was affecting overall gut health, affecting liver detox issues, like I mentioned. And then my minerals were out of balance as well, probably a lot because of stress, and because when your gut isn't healthy, you aren't digesting and absorbing all the nutrients from food. And then I had certain heavy metals that built up. Um, and then my neurotransmitters. So this is another piece of the puzzle I use for sleep, is my neurotransmitters were really depleted, especially serotonin and GABA, that help us feel calm and relaxed and able to sleep. And that's partly genetic and partly because when the gut isn't healthy and you don't have enough good bacteria in your gut, then it's actually the good bacteria in our gut that make 90% of our neurotransmitters. So then those can become depleted. And so all of these different issues were leading to my sleep issues. And another thing I haven't touched on is hormones. So my hormones were also out of balance, probably because I had a baby at age 39. And so I do think that that's what, led to the insomnia initially. But that's also from chronic stress, right? Because when your body's constantly making cortisol to deal with stress, it's taking those resources away from our sex hormones. So then estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, all of those become depleted. And that can also lead to sleep issues. So yes, multiple different things that can happen.
You're just describing my whole problems too. When I had it's like blastohominus, H.
Yes, that's what I
pylori,
had.
leaky
Yep.
gut, heavy metal. I mean, the list goes on, and that's why in FDN as practitioners, we just catch-all phrase, metabolic chaos, and the
Mhm.
hidden sources of internal chronic stress we don't know about unless we test. And that's why we always say test and not guess, but hidden hormones, immune, detox, digestion, energy system, neurotransmitters. I mean, it's never just one thing. I can't sleep.
Right.
That's why, I always say can't out supplement poor lifestyle habits. And you mentioned something
Mhm.
about that. It's like, all right, well, I can't sleep. So let's do this whole sleep hygiene routine evening and how I wake up in the morning, see sunrise. You sound like you figured out that's not really working for me. There's something else going on that led you down this path.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't work for people with chronic sleep issues. Like all of my clients have tried all of those things, right?
Hmm.
And it's just,
Hmm.
it's not enough if you also have a parasite. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a place to start. And I think everyone should start there. And those habits are important and helpful for overall health. But it's not enough if you're dealing with just sleep issues for a long time.
Yeah. My window. It's been 110 degrees here. Now I feel like, air. I have all the windows open. Fresh air does help you wake up. But I think it is, getting someone to realize that they can't feel better. They like something's not working. So how do you get people to point to go, okay, I really need to get help and find someone as you, and how you get them to understand that, okay, this isn't, sleep medication is not working for you. We need to look at this other approach.
Right. Yeah. So how do I tell people? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, it's hard. I think I struggle with getting to people to understand, that's not your new normal, that being a insomniac, getting a prescription drug to help you sleep through the night. How do people hear about you, or they just search for like, oh my gosh, I actually maybe I don't have to live like this forever.
Right.
How
Yes.
do they figure out how to get help?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I have a podcast as well, which is
Mm.
how a lot of people find me. So they're searching for sleep or insomnia in in their podcast app player. And so, yeah. And so I really try and explain, what's going on. And I even have a special, like, it's called a limited series podcast called Why You Can't Sleep. And so it's 25 episodes all about the different imbalances in the body that lead to sleep issues. So I feel like a lot of what I'm trying to do is educate people, first of all, as to, okay, this is really what's going on. Like, it's not because you're deficient in Ambien, even though a conventional doctor is going to prescribe sleep meds because they don't know what else to do. And it's not because you're watching TV at night, because millions of people watch TV before bed every night and still sleep well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's that education. And I will say, like, I mean, sleep is a major pain point. Like, I'm sure you know this too. Like when I wasn't sleeping, I was miserable. I think some people are more sensitive to being sleep deprived than others. And
Mhm.
I'm one of those people who's very sleep deprived. So when I had my
Mhm.
son, I was like, what have I done? I had this amazing life and now I'm not going to sleep for the next 12 years. But, I think that people don't want to live like that forever. And so they're really motivated to change it once they find out that there is a way to change it besides medication.
Mhm. Yeah. So talk about how insomnia. So is that just define that, I guess, first, and then what can impact that? Like, what are your top discoveries?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not obviously clinically diagnosing
Yeah.
insomnia, not a doctor, so I'm not doing that. There are specific criteria you have to meet to be diagnosed with insomnia sleep disorder. I'm talking about just general not sleeping well. So, whether it's trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, not getting enough sleep, not feeling rested in the morning. So, I'm talking about it in very general terms, like any trouble sleeping is what I'm
Mhm.
calling insomnia.
Mhm.
And, the top 5 things I would say that I see in almost all of my clients are cortisol and hormone imbalance. Again, gut health. So always something's going on in the gut. Liver detox issues and neurotransmitters.
Mhm.
And then another one is blood sugar. And this is a good one because you don't need a lab test necessarily to test for this. I mean, you probably get your glucose levels tested whenever you get blood work done, but that only gives, a very small piece of the picture. But yeah, but having more balanced blood sugar can really help, because whenever our blood sugar drops too low, the body releases cortisol, because that literally puts energy into our cells. And so if you're on this roller coaster of blood sugar, like extreme highs and lows all day, that's going to continue into the night. And when your blood sugar drops too low at night, then your body's going to release cortisol and it's going to wake you up. So that's like the first thing I always recommend people to do, is to start testing their blood sugar. A continuous glucose monitor is best, because then you can see what's going on in the middle of the night. And I'll like see this, and with myself too, when I started doing it, like you see this crazy dip in the middle of the night at 2 or 3 when blood sugar's dropping super low, and then it goes back up. And that will be the exact time that people are waking up. It's crazy to see.
And that low blood sugar overnight, you're correlating to increase in cortisol because of increase in a parasite activity in their gut.
No, it's just increase in cortisol.
This cortisol.
When the blood sugar drops too low, the body also
because of the blood sugar. But he also mentioned because the parasites are more active in the gut. I don't know if that would create cortisol. I know in Chinese medicine, the Chinese medicine clock, do you ever look at that?
Yeah.
I did that years ago. I'm like, that correlates, the 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. and how that's liver time in Chinese medicine. I just thought was so fascinating to put that together.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So the top 3 reasons why people wake up at 3 or 4 is blood sugar, low blood sugar, a parasite or pathogen, and liver detox issues.
Mm-hmm. So funny, I got a note on LinkedIn today that Aura Ring just bought Very, the blood sugar company. It's kind of like a NutriScience, but I think they're out of the UK, because I talked to them once, but they just bought it. So I was like, I wonder if because they know the correlation of sleep and blood sugar, as you're saying. So I'd be curious to see what the future is for putting those 2 platforms together.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So sorry, the side note, but the glucose is the one, and then the parasites, stress, cortisol. So what do we do about it? How do you detect that?
Yeah. Well, we use functional labs to find out what's going on. So I use the Dutch test, which is going to show hormones, sex hormones, and cortisol pattern. Like, it was crazy to see my cortisol was so high in the middle of the night, like higher than it was the rest of the day. So it's like, no wonder I was awake in the middle of the night and then exhausted during the day.
Yeah.
So that's what I recommend for that. And then I use the GI map to look at overall gut health, and especially for those pathogens. So I had blasto, that parasite as well, which I think is a pretty damaging one. Like, I've had a few clients have it too. And I think how it damages the gut, it can take longer to get better from that, but it's totally still possible. And, if you work on it and address it, and I was able to get rid of that in one protocol with herbs and a biofilm buster. So yeah, I didn't take medication for that at the time.
Yeah, I know we often suggest Parasitex and biocidin combined together to help that for 60, 90 days. And that can really help.
Yeah.
That's what I learned the hard way, is that, as I said before, I can't out supplement the poor lifestyle habit. So I did multiple tests, real, standard American doctors and functional medicine doctors, and doing this kind of work. But do you find people that still don't get better because they just do the supplement part? They did the supplements of Parasitex, biocidin, and GI detox for 90 days, but then they still have issues.
Yeah. I mean, and what I love about the training that we did, FDN, is that it's a very holistic look at what's going on in someone's life. So it's not just about supplements. Like, if you're still go all day long and stressed to the max, I mean, that's damaging your gut. And so just killing off a pathogen is not enough. Yeah. So it's definitely more. And if you're eating, unhealthy foods that are causing inflammation, like, then it doesn't matter if you kill the pathogen, your gut's still going to be unhealthy, and you're more likely to get infected again with another pathogen. So yeah, it's definitely important to look at the whole picture for sure.
So people come to see you, you do functional lab testing, and then you work on creating protocol for them based on the lab assessment and their areas of opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then how do you navigate where to start first? If they don't sleep well, do you need to focus on their stress management first or their labs, or what do you find that you need to pick first if someone's not comes to you for insomnia, sleep issues, but then you find out they have all this other stuff, they're hidden stressors that contribute to sleep info?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going to look a little different for everyone. So we work with our clients for 6 months. And so as soon as they sign up, we're sending them intake forms and getting to know their health history, their symptoms, and also their habits, their mindset about sleep. I also really help with sleep anxiety and dealing with kind of negative thoughts and obsession about sleep that those of us with sleep issues tend to get. Um, so yeah, so it depends on what's showing up there as to what we work on first, but we can start with with a lot of different things while we're still waiting for the lab results, because it takes at least a month to get those back. So we're immediately starting with some like change in habits if necessary, looking at diet and blood sugar right away. I assess for mold toxicity as well, and brain inflammation, and kind of how your genes might be acting up like right off the bat, so we can start addressing those things. And then when the labs come in, then we can dive even deeper into what's showing up in those labs.
So for each client, do you run for sure? You said the GI map, which is your microbiome, Dutch test for your hormones. Then do you do heavy metal hair mineral test,
Yes.
HTMA?
Yep, I do the HTMA, and then the fourth test is a neurotransmitter test.
Mm. Yeah. And that part is probably fascinating for people to learn about and how that correlates to neurotransmitter function to
Mm.
sleep. As you said, the GABA to neurotransmitters are calming versus heightened neurotransmitters energizing.
Yeah, yeah,
What do you see as
exactly.
common that you see kind of, oh my gosh, this again, this is really our social media or something's influencing too much Netflix? Do you see any common patterns that recurring?
Um, Definitely. I mean, I think some of the toughest cases are people who are very busy. So like type A, high achievers, or they have a lot going on. And like I always say, you can't wake up and just hit the ground running and go, 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 go all day long until you want to fall asleep and then expect to be able to just fall asleep and sleep
Uh-huh.
peacefully. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's so common you know, in our modern world that people live like that. And that's something that I've had to work on too, is like slowing down, lowering expectations of what I need to get done each day, taking time to relax, not working all the time, all of those things. And so, and I think what can also happen is people really get stuck in that fight or flight, or, that stress response. And so one of the things I help with too is like helping calm the nervous system, and sometimes they even recommend something like Primal Trust, which is a nervous system retraining program. Um, because we've got to, there's like physiological reasons why your body's stuck in fight or flight, like, these underlying stressors we've been talking about, like a parasite and things like that. But then also that go, 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 or if someone's dealt with trauma, had trauma and things like that, then that's also causing this stress response, causing the body to be in fight or flight all the time. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of factors that are involved that I think need to be looked into.
I just recorded a half an hour solo podcast yesterday, said the same thing. You're waking up from time you get out of bed in the morning until you hit the pillow at night, that you don't stop. And that's what I wrote a book, Life's Not a Race. It's a journey from my own
Mhm.
experience, but just how that's what I was doing, getting up at 4 a.m. and going to bed at 9. I never took any breaks. And I always am grateful in a weird way to the pandemic that it forced most all of us to change, maybe
Right.
temporarily, but made me get a taste of what a slower paced life is really like. And now I can't go back to my old life.
Yeah,
Oh no,
totally.
I'm not going there anymore. I like it
Yeah.
this way.
Well, and isn't it funny? Because we can do that in our 20s and maybe even 30s. Like your body can do that and still sleep and, and adjust. But over time, over decades, like it
Mhm.
can't keep up with that. It can't keep up with all that stress.
Do you find any genetic part of that people can tolerate more stress than others and that go-go lifestyle that it's like I see people in their 60s and they're still going nonstop. Like, how do you do that? How do I break at age 42
Right.
and you're still going? And what did wrong with my genetics that I can't handle that constant busyness and nonstop action?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, yes, it's different for everyone. We can all handle different levels of stress. I think
Yeah.
as the generations go on, like we're exposed to more and more toxins in the environment in our
Mm.
world and more stressors that our body also has to deal with. So I think that plays a role as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's, we also never know what's going on in someone's life, right? So they could appear very busy and then be very good at relaxing on the weekends or, making sure they get enough sleep or all those things. So, yeah. And, I know I hear from some of my clients, like, it's not fair, right? Like, it's not fair. My husband, and I can say this about my husband, like, doesn't care about his health to the extent that I do and sleeps just fine. And, and it's like, not that we want it to, but it's going to catch up to different people differently. And our, when our body gets out of balance, it manifests for different people in different ways. So not everyone's going to have sleep issues when their body's out of balance, but something else is going to break down over time at
Mhm.
some point.
And then let's two categories there. Females, as we age and our hormones, peri postmenopause seem to be a hot topic right now. And then I want to get into exercise, how we are often on this show, the high performers, the other side of the bell curve, doing too much of everything, overachievers, type AAA personalities. But that's another stressor. But let's pause and talk about females, as you're saying, might respond different than men. Have you found any patterns of sleep insomnia? Because often that correlates to our lower estrogen and lower or more progesterone with sleep is that calming hormone. But what have you found with your clients and aging females?
Yes. I mean, I work with a lot of people, a lot of women in perimenopause and menopause. And I mean, first of all, I want to say, like, I think that we can go through those periods in life, and I'm totally in perimenopause right now, and not have the extreme symptoms that are associated with it.
Yeah.
Like, I think, again, it's just another sign that the body's pretty out of balance and it's been dealing with stress for a long time. And I think as women, we deal with a lot more stress, especially like our generation where we're working, we're raising a family, and we're like responsible for so many different things that and even just being pregnant, giving birth, having a newborn, like all of that is very hard on our bodies. And so yeah, so I think it makes sense why women nowadays have such hard time going through this period. But I also think it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, I don't want to jinx myself, but like I said, I'm in perimenopause. And so I'm having irregular cycles and, some are long, some are short, but I don't have any other symptoms. So I'm like, well, like a few years ago, I was freaking out, like, oh my God, I just had a 19-day cycle. And then I'm like, it took me a couple of years to be like, oh, well, that's because I'm in my late 40s and it's okay. And it's what's happening. But I'm sleeping well. I have energy. I don't have hot flashes or night sweat, like I don't have any of these symptoms. So I think it's okay. This is just what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's just people use it as almost an excuse now that, oh, I'm going through menopause. I'm going to have this, and this happen to me. I'm going to have night sweats. I'm going to gain weight. I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm going to be grumpy. But it's more that I was taught, I think nutritional therapy, we learned this too, that your adrenals take over after your ovaries retire. And we need to support the adrenals. And what are we talking about the first half hour here? Chronic stress impacts the whole you, and that includes your hormones and your HP axis also is the HP thyroid connection and your ovaries. And so it's amazes me how so many people don't address, support your stress response system and support your adrenals with adaptogens, whatever we need that. It's all about, big topic, as you know, hormone replacement or menopause replacement, whatever you want to call it, but that it's almost like, let's also talk about how we are living life every day, and let's work on our lifestyle habits, as you're talking about, and our sleep, but identifying these other sources of hidden stress that are contributing to our beaker of stress. And we're having this overflowing beaker, stress beaker, that is just adding even more stress because our hormones are getting lower and our life stressors and all that. So it's always fascinating to me to watch this kind of phase we are right now, talking about this change in life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because it's so common that like everyone has symptoms, it's just what we expect. You don't, I think people don't think that you can go through that without it being
Yeah, it's
horrible.
normal. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I
exactly.
agree.
It didn't used to be that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, doesn't have to be normal. You can change how you go through that phase in life with your hormones.
Right.
I think it's an important part. Okay, let's talk about exercise, because a lot of our clients, listeners are athletes of some level. If you work out every day, you're committed to your exercise, you're an athlete. And often, as I said, everyone thinks, oh, exercise is good for me, I better do more. Or those that are struggling with weight gain, as we talk about hormones, aging, we tend to, oh, I'm going to exercise more so I can lose weight, or I'm training for a race, I need to do more because I'm not as fit as I want to be. So what have you experienced with too much exercise and that magic dose
Yes, this
on sleep?
totally, yeah, resonates with me. So I live in Jackson Hole, which is a mountain town, and everyone is very active. So when I hear athlete, I'm like, well, I'm not really an
Mhm.
athlete compared to the extreme athletes who are here, but I'm definitely, I definitely exercise regularly. And I realize once my, insomnia started, and then I dove into the functional lab testing and seeing like my cortisol was very depleted, and over exercise was part of that. And I just thought it was normal exercise, right? Like I moved here, I started mountain biking, I started backcountry snowboarding. So I spend all day in the mountains like regularly. And I just thought I was being healthy, but it turns out too much isn't healthy. And too much exercise causes our body to release cortisol. It's causes inflammation. And especially as we get older, like we don't want to be over exercising, especially in perimenopause and menopause, for sure. But it got to the point where a few years ago, I mean, I had what's called exercise intolerance. Like I remember I went for a 2-hour ski tour with friends and I was exhausted for the next 3 days. What used to just be, that's not even like a big day, 2 hours, that's like nothing. And so I've really had to, I mean, first of all, it was like a mental adjustment of like my identity of like, oh, I can't, like I used to pride myself on being strong and, being fast and keeping up with everyone. And it's like, oh no, I got to listen to my body now. And it's telling me to
Yeah.
slow down. And so, yeah, so that was kind of my low point a few years ago where I'm like, I really had to take it easy. And I also had copper toxicity, which, um, is a copper is a necessary mineral, but we can become have too much of it, which I think happened from me taking birth control for a long time. And so then when you exercise too, it can start a copper dump or like release that copper, which can cause all these symptoms like fatigue and sleeplessness. And so that's partly what was going on for me as well. But yeah, I've really had to, even now where I actually did a race this year. But I walked it like it was a 30K running race, but my friend and I hiked it. And, it took me 8 hours, whereas I did the same race 13 years ago. It took me 5.5. And it's just like, but that's okay. And, my goal was to finish it, to feel good, and I felt good the next day instead of just being totally depleted. So it's like now I've gotten to the point where I can exercise more again, but I really make sure to rest and recover and listen to my body and not overdo it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I literally, once again, just read this blog I wrote doing a 50K trail race, 2013, December's North Face 50K. I had adrenal exhaustions, like burnout breakdown that March, and was trying to do a race again. And I said the same thing in my blog. So funny. I ended up walking it most of the way, run down the hills, hike up the hills. And I did it in 7 hours. And I used to do it 5.5, but just be happy to be out there and enjoying nature and the journey and not be depressed. I'm not running as fast. And I said exactly all that in this blog. That's really funny. But
That's so funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I think it's I hate the excuse that people use that I'm getting older, I'm gonna get slower. To me, it's just like, no, same thing, you're gonna get hot flashes. It's just wondering what is wrong with us out of balance that's causing me to have different reaction or response to exercise. And let's figure out how to approach how we fuel, train, and perform each day by adjusting what we're doing and train differently at age 50 than I did when I was 40 or, for sure 30, that it's going to be different. That you said you need more recovery days. I don't need a ton of zone 2 training. I need more sprint training. And this may be one day long and slow. So I think that's why I love what we do as health detectives and personalizing programs for people, that more is not better, less is sometimes more, but what does that mean for you as a unique individual? Let's figure it out and work through it and course correct, because so many people don't do that and they just think, oh, this is normal. I'm getting older. I'm supposed to get fat and slow and unhappy,
Right.
not
Totally.
sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's not true.
what do you find with your clients with the, not sleeping at night and they're identifying hidden stressors relating to chronic inflammation? Do you see this showing up in blood chemistry panel as, inflammatory markers, CRP, and correlating all the labs together to see different patterns for relating to insomnia or sleep issues?
Yeah. Sometimes I don't do blood chemistry as
Mm.
part of my base labs. If clients have recent blood work, then we will, look at that and interpret it using what we call the functional or optimal ranges. So, a lot of times blood work comes back, everything's normal. And I talk about this all the time. Like, you know, my doctor says everything's normal. And it's like, well, when we look at the blood work, we can see that some things aren't normal. But I find that it's really the other labs that show what's going on. Like the blood work can say, oh, like you might have a pathogen or there's some liver issues. But then the labs that I run show like, yes, okay, and this is the pathogen, and this is the part of liver detox that needs support.
Mhm.
So, and it's crazy how many people actually don't have some of those inflammatory markers elevated, but there's still inflammation and there's still sources of inflammation. So it can just take a while for it to show up on blood work to that extent where it's like, okay, something's really wrong. Like we want to catch it
Mhm.
before blood work is catching it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that so many people get blood work, but they don't get the right blood work done, and everybody's normal. And so, if you're struggling with sleep issues, you go see your doctor and they say, oh, nothing's wrong with you, everything's normal. That's what we hear a lot, I think, in our world, is that, oh, this is what happened to me. And you just like, no, I know I'm not right. I can't sleep at night. I'm going crazy. But
Yeah,
that just like probably feels good to people to have some options like, oh, blasto hominis,
right.
copper toxicity, and find some answers. Because I think people are struggling so long that probably come see you that, oh, now I know why I can't sleep at night. I've been trying to figure out for years and just take a sleep medication. And now
Yeah,
I have some answers to how to fix it.
yeah. Yeah. It's like if you aren't feeling normal, then there's no way that your body's totally in balance. There's no way that it's normal.
Mm.
And yeah, so any of these things, like we keep saying, but like not sleeping well, feeling tired, not having energy, having aches and pains, like all of those things, it's not just because we're getting older, because we know, I'm sure you know plenty of people who are thriving as they're getting older. So it's not like this inevitable thing that has to happen. So if we
Yeah.
take care of ourselves and we can sleep well and have energy and feel good and all of those things until we're, very old. Like that's what I'm
Hmm.
going for.
Yeah. No, I keep saying that. My new thing is this year is recreate your current self now so you can be your best future self and thrive as you age and not struggle. But make that choice. That is
Mm,
your choice how you want to be looking. 'Cause my mom is 82 now. My dad passed away 2 years ago, and I watch all their friends age and that they've had for 20 years or more. And like, all right, this is so controllable. So much of it
yeah.
is so frustrating. But, we learn in health coaching the whole guiding versus directing method, that you can't change your family members or tell someone what to do. You have to get them self-motivated to make those changes, because that's the hardest thing. People just want to take that sleeping pill and
Uh-huh.
say, I want to get through that night sleeping, but to get them motivated, how do you find to get them to want to do the work? Because it is a lot of work to do these. It's not just
Yeah.
taking those supplement protocols, but it is so much supplement. We call it the dress protocol. But any tricks that people to get them motivated to stick through it?
I mean, I think I've learned this the hard way from my family is, yeah, we can't motivate anyone else. So my clients are highly motivated. Like they want to sleep better. They're going to do what it takes. And they're investing money and time and energy and effort to do what it takes because they do have that vision for themselves later on that they want to be healthy. But not everyone's like that. And those aren't my people. If you're not wanting that,
I know.
then I can't help you, you know? It's like it does take effort. And I
Yeah.
see this. So my dad and stepmom are in their 70s. My stepmom's like 6 years younger than my dad, though. My dad has always cared about his health.
Oh,
He's
good.
exercised, he's eaten pretty well. He definitely probably drinks too much alcohol, but otherwise, and he is like a very vibrant 70-year-old man. Like he just seems young. And my stepmom is like deteriorating
Oh,
really quickly. And but she hasn't taken care of herself, you know, like she hasn't exercised, she hasn't eaten well, she's definitely drank too much. And so it's hard to see. And at the same time, it's like, but you made these decisions to end up this way at this age. And
yeah.
so it's like promising to see my dad, who's doing great. And I'm sure it won't last forever, but for now, he's like very young compared to all of his friends and
Mhm.
colleagues and other people I know his age.
Yeah. So hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah.
Another topic I want to add in is the role of the liver in all this. We mentioned a little bit liver time, Chinese medicine, just all the toxins overload, anything you can help educate people on the importance of liver detox pathways, liver health, gallbladder function, lymphatic, anything on there that you've like to work with clients on?
Yeah. I mean, I will say all of my clients need liver help and support. It just, it's universal pretty much. You know, the extent to which each person needs that help is a little bit different, but there's
Mhm.
always something going on there. And I also talk about the Chinese clock and how our liver's supposed to be detoxing in the middle of the night. And when it has more toxins than it can handle, again, those toxins circulate around, they cause inflammation, the body releases cortisol. And so that's why liver detox is one of those main things that causes people to wake up in the middle of the night. And so, I kind of see it as a two-prong approach. And I think that our livers are so congested, again, because of all these toxins that we're exposed to. So it's really a matter of minimizing toxins. So that's, I mean, there's so many things to look at, but with the food you eat, with the things you put on your skin, with the things you're cleaning with the water you're drinking, like doing everything you can to minimize toxins you're getting from those sources. And then also supporting your body's ability to deal with those toxins because we're going to be exposed to some things. I mean, that's why we have these detoxification organs because, they need to detoxify.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that's a big part of it. And what's cool about like the Dutch test, for example, is it shows different parts of liver detox. So there's, three phases of liver detox, and then there are multiple parts of liver detox in each of those phases. And um, so we can see, okay, is it a methylation problem? Is it a sulfation problem? Is it a glucuronidation problem? What's going on? And then there are different nutrients that support each of those processes. So then we can pinpoint more directly what each client needs.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's so important, but it's also so fascinating. I just love being a health investigator and looking at all that data to help people, because it is so unique, every person, at what's off and what needs to be brought back to balance, homeostasis. The other thing with the liver, I was think of full moon. Do you ever do
Mm,
anything with the full moon and looking at sleep and activity, the parasites we're talking about, the full moon, the protocol people often discuss as I know Cellcore, Dr. Jockers,
uh-huh.
I always get these emails. It's full moon protocol time. Do you do anything
Yep.
with that?
Yeah. And I mean, because I have clients who tell me their sleep is disrupted on the full moon, and mine used to be too. So then knowing that I had a parasite, it makes total sense. So I've definitely had people do like the full moon cleanse, as Cellcore talks about, where a few days around the full moon, you're taking a bunch of their supplements to, I mean, to help with detox and also to help deal with deal with a pathogen or parasite. So yeah, I think that there is something to that for sure, that those pathogens thrive during that time.
Is it why do they thrive more in the middle of the night, you said, but
Hmm.
what's the full moon? I was trying to look that up and I forget. What makes parasites more active a full moon? The light pulls. I was almost like, how does that work? Because like high
Yeah.
tides, low tides, and a full moon. And then I started to go, okay, but that's so weird because the parasite's more active. How does this all work?
So it has to do with hormones though, and how those fluctuate during the full moon, but specifically serotonin and melatonin. So now I'm not remembering, but like one is has less, like I want to say there's less melatonin during the full moon, which is actually protective against parasites or something like that. And so anyway, it has to do with the hormones ebbing and flowing and neurotransmitters during the full moon that is then allowing the parasites to be more active. So then they're again like eating and reproducing and all of that more during the full moon. And so that's then why you're waking up more.
To look that up because it's always that as I get older, everything's how does that happen? I'm like a 2-year-old. How does that work? Because now
Right.
I lived in Seattle forever and the Pacific Northwest and moving down North San Diego 4 years ago and learning the high tides and low tides and king tides and it's around the full moon. Then I started to think, okay, how does that work? So same thing with the
Right.
parasites. What's the power of the moon? So
Yeah.
rabbit hole for everyone to go down. Okay,
Yes.
and then gluten, food sensitivities you mentioned were something for you. How do you find any correlations with gluten, wheat sensitivities, any other food sensitivities, and our sleep?
Yes. So again, it goes back to inflammation. So if your gut is damaged and say you're reacting to gluten or dairy or any other foods, gluten's a big one, unfortunately, because of how it's produced, how it's grown, how it's produced, how it's consumed these days, that it's actually not really a whole food anymore. So it is, I think it's common that people are reacting to gluten, but especially if your gut isn't healthy. I mean, I found that gluten directly impacted my sleep. And I didn't realize this until like 5 years ago when I was kind of testing things and I quit gluten for a month. And then I had a cupcake because I made it for my son's birthday. And so I had a cupcake, like a carrot cake cupcake or something. And that night I was totally awake at 4 in the morning, like wired. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Um, and I think it had a lot to do with the gluten. So
And sugar?
when, I mean, it could be for sure, but yeah, I think it was the gluten more,
Yeah.
honestly.
Interesting.
Yeah. Cause I could have a gluten-free cupcake and that would not happen.
Mm.
So yeah. So that's, and I realized like once I quit gluten, like you can't tell if you're eating all the time that it's really affecting you. But once I quit for a month and then you have it again and then it's like, oh, I feel bloated, I feel tired. Like it's all minor things that you don't notice until you give it up for a while and then have it again and then your body reacts and you're like, oh, this is affecting me.
Yeah.
So, but what's happening is if you're reacting to gluten, your body's having an immune response to it. And again, that's causing inflammation. And so if you're eating all the time, that's causing this low grade inflammation all the time, including your body releasing cortisol all the time. And so it's just, yeah, it's just another factor that can be contributing to that.
Domino effect to create
Yes.
metabolic chaos we talk about. It's just on stop. But that's so fascinating how it's not, but we find it as practitioners, we look at it's not one thing, right? So it's not
Yeah.
one thing disrupting your sleep, is what in summary you're saying. Insomnia, sleep disturbances isn't just because of stress, it's combination of external and internal stressors that are contributing to inflammation, domino effect, leaky gut, and all sorts of crazy things that get,
Yeah.
we're more
And
susceptible to everything the more stressed we are. So
totally. And this is why like half of my clients have seen other practitioners. Like they've gone to functional medicine doctors or naturopaths or, whatever, and they haven't gotten better. And what's usually missing is this look at the big picture, because you can go to someone who specializes in gut health, but if your hormones are also out of balance and you have heavy metals and lack of neurotransmitters, like you're not going to get better just by addressing your gut.
yeah.
And your gut is affecting everything else. Like everything in the body's connected. So again, that's why I love our approach, because it recognizes that, and that also your habits, your lifestyle, all of that are affecting everything as well. And so we need to look at everything.
Yeah. Well, that's what I get asked what I specialize in when I look for practitioner to help other people work part-time. I was looking at options and people are like, PCOS, and I work with leaky gut or gallbladder issues, and they're all important, but it's like, well, I can't just, I specialize in chronic stress.
Right.
It's like everything impacts that. It's like PCOS, why is it just to fix one thing? You still need to do, I think, this approach. And sleep disturbances, you still need to look at the whole picture and then figure out for a person what is off and fix that. So
Yeah.
I think it is how we do a holistic approach.
Yeah.
But sleep is always an area of opportunity for people. And that's such just a good area to like sleep, because I always am finding with people where to start first while we do the labs. And it's just how to work on optimizing your sleep. Because if you don't sleep, your workouts are crappy. You probably don't eat as well. You're not happy. You're grumpy, agitated, more anxious, less patient. I
Huh?
mean, everything's kind of messed up in your day if, well, at least for me, if I do not get my sleep, or if I
Mhm.
see ants all over my coffee machine in my pantry. We'll call
Right.
it my stress alarm system going on. But yeah, sleep is just a big area for, I think, to optimize. But I love your approach, how you're integrating our FDN practitioner health investigation, look at the whole picture to figure out, all right, how are we going to get results? So not just treating it with take some melatonin or take some GABA, but let's work on all of you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. And what your podcast is why you can't sleep, but a unique good name. That's how people find you because they're looking, I can't sleep. Oh, look, there's a podcast.
Right.
I should call that. Girl, why am I stressed out?
Yeah.
So you focus on that, your podcast as a sleep detective. You're helping people learn about their health. Tell us kind of what your podcast is about.
Yes. Well, so I have that Why You Can't Sleep. My regular podcast is called the Sleep Detective Podcast, What Causes Insomnia and How to Fix It. And so that's the one that I'm doing on a weekly basis. So kind of talking about anything related to sleep, why you can't sleep, but also, tips and tricks for sleep. And then occasionally I interview people as well on like breathing for sleep or meditation or burnout or, other things related to sleep as well. So I highly recommend you listen to that. You'll find a lot of answers there for sure. Um, yeah. And then my website is the sleepdetective.com. And I have two different programs to help people. So we work with clients one-on-one. I say we because I have a co-coach who also helps with a lot of my clients. She's an FDN as well and trained in my method as well. And then we have a group program too. So, but both are doing the labs and the assessments and giving a customized plan, and then either offering private support or group support to help people implement the plan.
Mhm. Yeah, I find it's great to have the private sessions, but it's nice to have that group support that you're not the only one struggling.
Exactly.
You need a
Yes.
little bit of both, but I need love from other people that can like, oh yeah, that's me too. Get that.
Right. Yeah, because most of us, like, when it's me, like, I didn't know anyone else who had sleep issues. You definitely feel like you're crazy and like the only one who's dealing with this when actually there are millions of people dealing with this. But they all feel alone too.
I think that's why I wrote my book. It's like, I don't, if anyone wants to read it, they can read it, but it's for me just to write it as therapy to share kind of, here's what I thought it was as a great athlete. And then I went from 3 months later to gaining 30 pounds and having naps in the afternoon. It's like, wait, why did this happen to me? But then you get other people starting to go, oh, I felt that struggle too. They probably didn't take
Mhm.
10 years to fix themselves, but
Right.
that's why we reach out to those people. This is what I did. Don't do what I did.
Yeah, exactly.
So amazing. Well, thanks for your work and following your passion and your purpose and having a great mission to get people to sleep better by looking at the whole person, by reaching out with functional lab testing, finding those hidden sources of chronic stress that can be contributing to your lack of quality sleep and deep sleep too. Restored and wake up feeling energized. So it doesn't have to be that way, right? It's not the new normal. Part of getting older, you're going to have crappy sleep because that's what they
Yeah,
say. You're
exactly.
older, you're not going to sleep as long. It's going to be struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, doesn't have to be that way.
Amazing. All right. And then website we said, we'll put everything in the show notes. Any social media people want to follow, channels you go to
Yeah,
post
I'm
on
on
them?
Facebook as a sleep detective and Instagram as Martha Lewis Sleep Detective.
All right. So the sleep detective. All right. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you for having me.